we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people don't understand people.
Welcome to Get Curious. I'm your host, JLPalmer. Join me as I explore my curiosity about 35 scales and a textbook called Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomenon, Analysis, Prediction, and Management of Human Affairs. And the man who put it all together for us, Mr. Marshall, is a polymathic intellectual who has devoted over 50,000 hours to the study and practice of multiple dimensions of human potential and development. He received a classical education as an honor student, was accepted into engineering school while still a junior in prep school, and attended college on academic scholarship. He graduated college with a Bachelor of Science. While still an undergraduate, he began the study of alternative arts and sciences, which today would be described as transformational and holistic. Eventually, he became a professional practitioner, and after 28 years of formal education, had a long career as a human development engineer. Jim has integrated the best aspects of the most advanced technologies on the planet and expanded their limits by his own research and discovery. He has successfully treated and or trained hundreds of clients over a 40-year career and is the inventor of Septemics and several consciousness expanding systems. His area of expertise includes psychology, philosophy, theology, parapsychology, science, engineering, mathematics, law, literature, history, music, organization, metaphysics, military science, political science, physical culture, and education. Jim, would you please tell us, what is Septemics?
Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to humans occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down some human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique, and between them, they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, situation, difficulty that any person has regarding people can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one.
And why 7?
In the website, there's a section called Introduction to Septemics.
Yeah.
If you read that, there's a section. Each of sections starts with a question. And one of the sections, the question is, why 7? And I then explain why 7. It's a mathematical explanation. You can just go to my website and read it.
And I think that there's a lot of information on your website there, Jim, that's very, very helpful. Thank you very much for taking the time today, to explain what you have and to share what Septemics is and for bringing it to life.
Well, I think the birth of Septemics was when I inserted the 7th level into a 6th level scale, and it then manifested mathematically and went from being a line to a plane. And I said, whoa, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And I saw that it was natural law. All of that happened in 1 or 2 seconds. And then I realized I was into something big. I think one of the problems with this subject is how big it is. Now, in terms of the benefit you get from it, the bigness of it is positive. But the truth is that this exceeds the imagination of most readers. Most readers, when they come to this, have no idea what they're getting themselves into. This is big. What I mean by that is readers have been coming to me for 30 years saying, Jim, you covered everything. And it's true, nobody has ever come to me and said, what about this? I always say, well, it's a scale of literacy level 2. Boom.
I think that's fantastic that it's all there. And it is a large undertaking for someone like me to go through but I think it's worth it. The fact that you say take it, apply it, and understand that it's like a study and it's text. It's not a novel. It isn't, it's not that it's hard reading, but it's not light reading. It's not fluffy. And there's you really do need, like you said, to understand part one before you go to part two. And I don't find a lot of value in jumping around except for personalized things for me a little bit, from being, going through the book as it's written. Once I got past the introduction and into the individual scales, I did find that it was better for me to actually find some of the scales that were more personal, both on the individual and the group level, than it was to just go through them all for the value of this conversation, more so than it was for the value of the material, because I really did want to have more meat into what I was to understand more what I was reading than I did want to just consume it all. But I will go back through it all in its
Mm-hmm.
entirety and then go back to the personal side now that we've had our conversation.
Well, it's a natural progression that every student goes through. That when he comes to a new subject, he has to focus on the early stuff. If you get stuck, you can go back. What didn't I understand and clear that up and then come forward again? And then after you know the whole thing, then it becomes easy to jump around. It becomes even fun to jump around. But for any student in any subject, you want to start at page one, line one, and move through ploddingly until you finish the book. And then you can come back later and you'll be jumping around and be fine about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've also said too, as a student, that it was important for a student of ordinary intelligence, I think you put it, where understanding this can be a barrier, could be our personal insecurities, which we didn't touch on, which I would like to touch on.
I already know from more than 30 years of experience with this, since the subject was established, that this subject definitely undercuts depression and anxiety. And I could explain to you technically exactly how that works. Whatever depression or anxiety you may have will be lessened by using this book.
It's Mental Health Month here, and I would very much like to explore that.
I put 50 years into creating this. And so before I shuffle off to heaven or whatever, I would like to explain it in a way that people will get.
There's so much of a population, Jim, that has depression and anxiety
Yes,
and is so absolutely disconnected socially. And
right.
and the social health element of life is so important that I would really, really like to focus on that.
Now,
Yeah.
these are two separate things, which is why they're given separate names and treated differently. Let me tell you how this works. And this comes directly out of my work over a 40-year period as human development engineer. Anytime a person is depressed, that traces back to one or more upsets. In other words, something upset the person. It could be multiple upsets, or it could be one big upset, and it was unhandled, and eventually it led him to being depressed. Guy comes home from work and he finds his wife in bed with another guy. This upsets him. There's an element of shock in there, isn't it?
Yeah, you would think.
Okay. So now, 3 months later, this guy shows up in a therapist's office, and the therapist says, "Why?" He says, "I don't know. I don't feel good, and I'm drinking. I'm stopped eating, and I've stopped exercising. You know, these are signs of depression." So it doesn't take the therapist long to figure out this guy's depressed. If the therapist knows what he's doing, he eventually he'll ask him about it. When did this start? And he'll trace it back to this incident, which was like a traumatic incident for this guy. So the point is that depression is a result of a person being upset, and that upset not being corrected. Now, it's possible that the guy could say to his wife's current lover, "Get the hell out of here." And then he and the wife go in for marriage counseling and they sort it all out. And he doesn't get depressed. because the upset was resolved.
Right.
I actually had an incident like that where I was living with a woman. We were together for 4 years. And so uh, one day she said, while you were at work, I slept with my old boyfriend. I said, okay, well, tell me about it. And she did. And I didn't get upset. And that was the end of it. It's like I handled it in a rush. The fact that she trusted me enough to tell me and led me to understand she realized that I was not a nutty person. I was not going to get upset and was not going to throw a tantrum or anything. I just said, okay, thanks for telling me. And we went on. So there was no depression, and that's what you would hope to have. But that's not usually what happens with people, right?
No,
When a guy hears something like that, there's a big upset and
like
they
a
have a fight.
violation. Yeah.
Right. So this goes to what is depression? Depression is upsets that have not been handled. And it's usually multiple upsets, and it's usually a sequence of upsets. Because underneath this incident, this hypothetical incident, is probably stuff going back to his childhood that he's not aware of. So eventually, if you get to all of that, the depression goes away because the upsets are resolved in his mind. He's not upset anymore. So let's look at what septemics is. Septemics is the specifics of a person. Now, anytime a person is upset, there is always a generality. Listen to what upset people say, right? Let's say a guy is depressed and you talk to him and he'll say things like, you can't trust women.
General.
All women are the same. You're going to get generalities from these guys. Why is he giving you generalities? Because he's upset.
Mhm.
So when you bring the specifics to bear, the generalities evanesce. He sees that they're not true. I mentioned to you about someone who told me all men are beasts.
Right.
Well, if I could work with that person over a period of time, get that person to realize that that's a generality, this person is obviously upset. Now, I can tell you, I happen to know this person had two relationships, and they both were train wrecks. And I also knew both of the guys, and they were very smart, nice guys, polite guys. And she couldn't make it work. Well, if you're going around thinking all men are beasts, well, that's what you're going to get.
Mm.
That's a generality. So upset people give you generalities. So, like people who, if you talk to someone who's anti Semitic, he is generalizing, he has incidents. If you trace it back, you'll find incidents with Jewish people that because he was not born thinking that. That's something that happened along the way. There were incidents that upset him. And if you get to them and resolve them, then he won't have that generality anymore. So, septemics is anathema to generalities. It is the exact opposite of generalities because when you find out that you are at level 4 on the scale of stopping, that is very specific.
Mhm.
And when you read the material, you'll say, I tell you with specificity what this is about. How does somebody manifest if he's at level 4? It's not vague. There is no vagueness in this book. Vagueness is anathema to engineers. Engineers do not tolerate vagueness. Engineering does not allow vagueness, which
Uh-huh.
is why we have factors of error for everything. So that's on the generality side. Is there a question about that?
Well, I think I understand, but like you say, there's general and there's specific.
Right.
And so I think the more specific you get, the more of an understanding you can have with these scales. Mind you, not all of them are specific scales, so don't want to confuse
Right.
things there.
So let me give you an example. I had a relationship with a woman when I was young. When I was a young man, this material didn't exist. And so I made the same stupid mistakes that everybody else makes because I didn't know this material. Now that I know this material, there's no drama in my life. So I was with this woman, right? And it was a train wreck. Well, Through meditation, eventually I came to understand where she was on the scale of basic purposes. This took many decades for me to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did, then the whole thing opened like a flower in my mind. I saw what had happened. I saw why I shouldn't have been with her. I saw why she acted the way it did, she did. And now I stopped thinking about it. It's like ancient history. I can remember it, but it doesn't bother me anymore because I resolved it. And
Mm-hmm.
that happens all the time with this subject. So, you're reading, let's say, the scale of equanimity, and you say, wait a minute, I can see that Fred, who I dated in 1991, was at level 6 on this scale. No wonder we had all this trouble. That explains X, Y, and Z. And then you forget about Fred and you're done with that. There's no more depression about Fred and that relationship breaking up. It just goes away
Mm-hmm.
because you got it down to the specific. So as you use this, it's specific. Every time you spot a level on any scale for any person, it's specific. It's not vague. And so whatever generalities you have, just evanesce because now you see the correct data. Okay, that's what this was. It's just like if a person says, well, he gave me a flower, but I don't know what kind of a flower it was. Then he remembers, now I can see it was a chrysanthemum, right? So he gets it down to the specific. And this works this way for everybody. So like I had times in my life when uh, I literally couldn't remember the names of some of my girlfriends. It was just, a mess in my mind. And eventually I worked with it. Eventually I sorted it all out. I remembered them all. And then I stopped thinking about them. And I don't think about them at all anymore. So that's on the depression side. That's how you undercut depression using this. You don't have to bring it to bear specifically on the depression. You just have to use the book.
Yeah.
And the natural process of using Septemics will dissolve the depression. Is there a question before I go to anxiety?
Well, I'm just naturally thinking that, we should be teaching this in schools if we still want to be using schools. But I think every human being should be taught this from a young age, from a point where they start to experience different things that relate to the scales, so that they are knowledgeable.
Right. I agree. So now let's look at anxiety.
Mhm. Anxiety's cloudy, hey? It's got some dynamics to it that might be quite a bit different and challenging.
Well, let me tell you the difference between depression and anxiety. Depression is always a looking back.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you depressed? Well, I'm depressed because my wife left me. See,
Yeah.
that was 6 months ago. It's in the past, right? It already happened. That's why he's upset because it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is the opposite. Anxiety is about the future. So, like the guy is worried, is my wife gonna divorce me? Is she
Mm-hmm.
gonna kick me out?
Yeah,
He
certainty.
has anxiety. Is
Mm-hmm.
she cheating on me? He has now. So you see, it's an opposite look. It's not the past, it's the future. So when a person has a problem is what generates anxiety. If you don't have a problem, you can't have anxiety. There has to be a problem for you to be anxious about. So let's say a guy's being audited by the IRS. Oh boy, does he have anxiety, right? That's a big problem. So he comes home looking terrible. His wife says, what's wrong? He says, oh, I have this problem with the IRS. See, it's a problem. And he will have anxiety until some point in the future when it goes away or he dies first, one of the two. So when a person has a problem, it always results in an indecision. That
Okay.
is what a problem is. He can't make up his mind. That's why it's a problem. Now, for a person who's decisive, A person who's decisive doesn't have problems. He just makes up his mind. You know the old thing about the guy with the flower, and he says, she loves
Yeah,
me
yeah,
not, she loves me not.
yeah.
That's anxiety. That's a problem. He doesn't know. So the guy who figures it out, he uses this material and he determines whether she loves him or not. And whichever way it goes, he's better off.
Well, there's a decision. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Okay.
when you use this material, you get to the specifics. What are the, see, you cannot have a problem unless you don't know something. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So let's say this guy with the IRS. Boy, does he not know things. He doesn't know what they're going to ask him. He doesn't know what receipts they're going to accept. He doesn't know which guy at the IRS is going to interview him. He doesn't, you see, he's got all these unknowns.
Yeah.
So he's worried about this. Why is he worried? Because he has unknowns. If he had no unknowns, he wouldn't be worried. So sometimes you see a person uh, who's just, who has, he's easygoing, he's not upset about anything. And I'll give you an example. Um, I've been in business one way or another since I was a boy. When people screw me, I take them to court. That's what you're supposed to do. You file a lawsuit against them. Now, sometimes it settles out of court, often it does. But if it doesn't, so you have to go to court. So obviously, as the plaintiff, I'm the main witness, right? So I've been on the stand many times and they cross-examine you. Now, when I'm cross-examined, there's no anxiety. I'm not worried. There's not anything there I don't know. You know, whatever they ask me, I answer it. You
And
know,
you're
the
not
court,
attached to the outcome?
I might be attached to the outcome, but the
Hmm.
point is, I don't have unknowns.
Yeah.
I know what happened. It's in my complaint.
Mhm.
This guy accepted this money from me, promising to deliver the service. He never delivered the service. I tried to contact him. I couldn't. I never saw him again. And eventually I filed my lawsuit.
Mhm.
See? Now, if that guy has any brains, he'll just give me back my money. But there's a lot of people who don't have any brains, and you have to drag them into court. When I go on the stand, I'm fine. I'm perfectly okay. I'm not nervous at all. Now, most people, when they testify in court, are very nervous. I'm not nervous because I don't have anxiety. I don't worry about things because I know a lot. I know what happened. I know what I'm going to say. I know what I did. And sometimes they'll ask me something I didn't anticipate. I'll think about it and I'll give them a straight answer. You realize how easy this is if you're telling the truth.
I do, but I'm still giggling at some people don't have any brains because, Jim, we all, we might not use them, but we definitely have them. Sorry. Yes, all seriousness aside.
Obviously, it's a figure of speech.
Yes, of
But
course.
for example, then I would have witnesses that I would call, who were part of associated or part of one of the defendants or associated with it, and boy, are they anxious. I once had a defendant, and we brought this person in for a deposition. Well, that happens before you go to trial. So I'm there with my two lawyers, and this person is there with a lawyer. And this person actually broke down in tears. Uh, we weren't asking anything peculiar. Lawyers are very straightforward. Okay, what was the date when this occurred?
Mhm.
What hour of the day was that? Did you know he was going to be there before you got there? Right? Those are the questions a lawyer will ask. Because if they don't ask those questions, objections are raised because they're not good questions. And that's what the rules of evidence are about. You have to elicit your responses in the correct way. And there are many rules of evidence, and lawyers know them, and that's how they couch their questions. They don't just say to a guy, how long have you been dealing drugs?
Yeah, it's not.
That's an objectionable question. First, you have to say, have you ever dealt drugs? And if the guy says yes, then you can say, what type of drugs did you deal? When was that? Where, what? See, so there are rules. So this person just completely went to pieces and cried. I've also seen policemen on the stand involved in a case who were supposed to be good witnesses who just looked like they were going to have a heart attack. Well, I knew they were lying. I knew they had been bribed or they had been uh, suborned by the defendant. I already knew that, but they were just nervous wrecks. And eventually that type of a witness is the type of witness who will come forward and give you evidence you didn't even ask for because they want to be out of it. Right? That happened. I've had that happen to me. Have somebody in, and then a couple of days later, they say, here, this is a letter I got from the defendant. Oh, thank you very much. Excellent evidence. See? So those people had anxiety, right? How come they have anxiety and I don't? I don't worry about things. I'm notorious as a non-worrier. I don't get upset and I don't get worried. I just don't. I just learned how to do it. And the secret to all of that is not reacting. You don't react. So, for example, I have a cousin who I grew up with. Wonderful person. We did everything that boys normally did together in those days. Sports, clubs,
Getting in trouble.
going to parties, playing in a band to get right. He was murdered
Oh
some years
no.
ago.
Oh, I'm so
This is a
sorry.
wonderful person, a father and a grandfather. Everybody liked this guy, and with good reason, right? I was not upset. Doesn't mean I don't love him. Doesn't mean I didn't wished he didn't get murdered. I just didn't react because I know how to not react. It's a skill. It's what the Chinese call wu wei, which means no action or non-action. You just don't do anything. You just let it be however it is. Now, everybody else in the family was hysterical, and I was not. Now, I said and wrote nice things about him, but I was not upset. Same thing would happen when my mother died. I was not upset. Okay? Because I know how to be. Remember, upset leads you to depression. I don't get depressed. I don't have depression. You know why I don't have depression? I don't get upset. You know why I don't have anxiety? I don't worry about anything. Like, for example, I'm going to die just as you are. And in my case, it's not that far off because I'm pretty old. So am I worried about that? No, not at all. It's going to happen. And when it happens, that's the end of this life. I'm not worried about it in the least. A lot of people are worried about that. They have anxiety. Talk to most people. You'll see they have anxiety about death.
Mhm.
I have no anxiety about that. Now, you could say that I was able to get to these states because of Septemics, but you could also say that I got the Septemics because of those states, because it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So that's how this. Did I explain about anxiety? How this helps when you spot the specific? You have knowledge.
Yeah.
It's not vague. Okay, that's why
Yeah.
I didn't get along with that woman, and we had a bad relationship, and it broke up, and so now it's like there's nothing left to it. It's just something. If somebody reminds me of it, I'll think about it. But it's like you have people go. The idea of carrying a torch. Have you ever heard of that term?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that means yeah, Joe, he's carrying a torch. He broke up with Mabel, and he's never been the same again. Well, I don't carry torches for anything.
Yeah. Hanging on to
So
the old stuff.
what's that?
Hanging on to the old stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the
So,
depression side. The anxiety is worrying about the future.
hmm
What's going to happen?
Jim, what would you say about, this epidemic that we seem to have where society makes us kind of um, pretend or put on masks about who we really are just to fit in, and the loneliness that seems to be humanity right now.
First of all, that's always been true. There's never been a time that that hasn't been true.
Okay.
And one of the benefits of studying classical literature and ancient history is that you find out that people are fundamentally the same. The same things that go on today, what went on in ancient Rome, went on in ancient China, went on in ancient India, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when you study history, you see these same things going on. Um, like a lot of what's going on with Donald Trump today is what went on with Napoleon.
So you wouldn't say that social media and our current cultures made this worse, or our individualism and our need to be successful, even though we may not be or put that forefront. You wouldn't say that that's made it worse.
Well, I do think that the internet contributes to it, but that's just the current set of circumstances.
Mhm.
It used to be that people wrote letters. If you study the founding fathers, like for example, John Adams and Abigail Adams, we have like hundreds of letters that they wrote to one another
Mm.
that were preserved, and it's generally regarded as the most reliable information we have about the founding fathers comes from those letters
Mm.
because John Adams would talk to Abigail about Thomas Jefferson. So
Mm.
we know what he thought. So that's just, do people write letters now? Who writes letters?
Some.
I
Yeah,
haven't
it's
written
not
a
as
letter.
commonplace for sure.
Right. I haven't. And I mean, I don't even buy stamps anymore. What are you going to do
No.
with stamps? You know? Uh,
Collections. They're for collectors nowadays. Hmm.
I mean, you can just send an email, but even then, there's not that much of it now.
No.
There's a lot of texting,
Hmm.
you know. So that is just the method by which it occurs. But I can tell you, uh, that is where polymathy comes into this. I'm a serious scholar of ancient Rome. I studied Latin for 4 years, and I read Caesar and Cicero and Virgil and Ovid and Horace, et cetera, et cetera. And so I know how they were and what they thought. Not much has changed. It's the same stuff. So it's just, packaged a little bit differently. I mean, Caesar was a figure very much like Donald Trump. You had people who loved him and people who didn't love him. Now, when the senators got together and murdered him in the Senate, that started a civil war. The Caesar lovers and the Caesar haters actually divided Rome into two camps, which is very much what's going on in the United States right now. It's just in those days, they would raise armies and kill one another. Uh, now it's more like phony lawsuits, defamatory texts. It's a different style. It's a different uh, way of attacking somebody. But if you look at all of the legal actions that were brought against Donald Trump, all of which went nowhere. If you
Right.
followed the history of it, it went nowhere. It's that's just how it's done now. In those days, you got a knife out and death by a thousand cuts. It was, I mean, Caesar was stabbed maybe 100 times,
Hmm.
right? So and probably bled to death. That's probably the cause of death. Um, so that's one of the things that I learned from my studies. And the same thing with my career in as a human development engineer, that you have a guy comes in, he seems completely different from this other client, different gender, different age, different socioeconomic level, different education level, but they both have exactly the same problem. They don't know that. I know that because I work with both people. Uh, exactly the, just fill in the blanks. So I don't think much that is going on now is distinguishable from what's been going. It's just that I know history and most people don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I could teach a history course without cracking a book because I've been studying it since I was a boy and I know what went on uh, between, these famous people, what was said and how they acted and why things worked out the way it does. It's very specific. And the more you study it, the more specific it seems to you. And the more you realize that nothing has changed.
You see
I
it
shouldn't say
repeating
nothing.
itself. Yeah.
Before the context has changed, the style has changed. The way Donald Trump speaks, no president has ever spoken like that before.
No, no.
So obviously it's different. Or you could say, think about how many appearances he's made, interviews, taking questions from the press. It's never ending. You can't even keep up with it. This is a guy who is continually talking to the public. He never shuts up. He gets interviewed by NBC on Monday, CBS on Tuesday, and CNN on Thursday. It just, well, that's never happened before. So, it's a different situation. But as far as Donald Trump being different, no, I don't see him as very different. I find him a very comprehensible person. Frankly, I know what he's going to do before he does it. And I know what he's going to say before he says it. Because I understand him, because I'm from New York and I knew about Donald Trump when he was my neighbor 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share specifically today before
Yes,
we? Yes.
I would like to say to your listeners, the data in this book is vital for every person and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. We all have problems and dilemmas and situations we can't resolve, and we just don't know how to go about doing it. And when you study this material, if the situation has anything to do with people, it will tell you. It will simply tell you how to handle it, what to do about it, because it becomes self-explanatory. It's just like understanding anything else. So, for example, I've been into gardening since I was a boy. So you might say, oh, come and see my garden. So I go to JL's garden and I walk in there and I say, oh, she has hydrangeas, irises, tulips, roses, forget-me-nots, bougainvillea, begonias. Now, the reason I can analyze it that way is I know a lot about flowers because I've been doing it my whole life. Now, if you bring a 5-year-old boy into your garden, the same day that I was there, he would see and smell exactly what I saw and smelled. But all he can say is, these are pretty and they smell nice.
Red, pink, purple, and green. Yeah.
That's all he knows.
Yeah.
Now, most adults are like that little kid regarding people. They don't know what they're looking at. They have no idea what they're looking at, which is why in the United States, more than 50% of the people who get married get divorced. Clearly, those people did not know what they were looking at. If they had, they either would not have gotten married or they would have lived happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the general condition of people. They don't know what they're looking at. So take some guy, right? Friday comes, he says, oh, I want to go out and meet a young lady. He puts on his best suit. He goes to a nice bar. He sees a pretty young lady. He buys her a drink. And now they're talking, right? Oh, what part of town do you live in? Oh, did you go to that concert? Right? The usual stuff that happens, right?
Mm.
Now, while this is happening, 10 minutes into it, he thinks to himself, boy, she's pretty and she smells nice. That's the same thing the little kid just said about your garden. It's exactly, that's all he knows. Now, that's enough for him to ask for her phone number. But this poor guy doesn't know what he's getting himself into, and it's the same thing for her. She doesn't know. Now, if he knew this material, he would be able to actually spot some things about her that were substantive and make a decision. Oh, this is somebody I really want to have around me. Or the opposite. This is not somebody I want to have around me. So, for example, I'm a single guy. More than a year ago, I met this gorgeous blonde, and we were very interested in one another. And so we're going through the same, usual getting to know you. Oh, what kind of a car do you drive? What kind of restaurants do you go to? What kind of movies do you like? Blah, 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 right? In the beginning of a relationship, that's normal. So we're having a conversation, and I notice she's low on a certain scale. I thought to myself, well, okay. And we're having another conversation, I notice she's low on this other scale. Oh, okay. And we had another conversation, I notice she's low on this other. Wait a minute, I said to myself. I barely know this woman, and I already have determined that she's at or near the bottom of three different scales. So what that means, if I extrapolate this, by the time I know her well, I'm going to find that she's at or near the bottom of 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 scales. And that's not somebody I want to know because, as I point out in the book, those are the people who cause all the trouble. Find somebody who's causing trouble. You will find he is at or near the bottom of some of these scales. Like you take somebody, he's in the mafia, he's a drug dealer, and he's an alcoholic. I guarantee you he's going to be at or near the bottom of most of these scales.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's that way. If he was higher on the scales, he wouldn't do that. He'd go to college and get a degree and be an engineer.
Well, I think it's safe to say, Jim, if we actually took the time to put into these scales, that we could save us a lot of time in heartache and other and other. So it's time well invested and with many returns.
That was exactly what I was just going to say. Think about. Now, this woman was as beautiful as Lana Turner, okay? But most guys would have jumped right in and had a train wreck.
Sure, yeah.
That didn't happen to me. Now, think about this. Think about all the money I saved
Mm-hmm.
on $100 dinners that I would be buying for her while we were dating. Think about all of the aggravation I saved myself. Because when you have a bad relationship, there's always aggravation involved. Think about all the time I saved myself going out with somebody in a relationship that was going to go nowhere.
Yeah.
So I saved myself all of that. That was it. I didn't think about it again. I don't even remember her name. And I went on to somebody else. Now, anybody can do that. Anybody can get this book, do that exact same thing. And it doesn't have to just be about dating. It could be about your business. It could be about your mother and father. It could be about your kids. It doesn't matter. Because anytime people are involved, these scales apply. It's not hard to do this. You just have to study the material and just look at the person because people tell you their levels.
Yeah.
If you just shut up and listen, people tell you their levels. You just have to know what the level is. If you don't know the scale and you don't know the levels, it doesn't do any good for them to tell you because you don't know what they're saying.
Yeah.
So they give you the data, but you need this to decode it.
Jim, thank you so very much for all your time today. There's a wealth of information here, and I look forward to sharing it. And I do encourage everybody to get a copy of your textbook and study and visit septemics.com. And I'll put some information here in the show notes for everyone so that they can go and find you everywhere and definitely do some more research.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
I know you want to get to know our guests better. I definitely will be. If you'd like help with your podcast or you'd like to be my next guest, check out the show notes for details on how to get signed up with PodMatch. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and keep growing.